Also here tonight, we have Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz, member of the House Judiciary Committee, and Chris Hahn, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer and host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast on Revolver. We invited congressional Democrats to weigh in, but they declined. Thank you very much, both of you, for being here tonight. A lot of heat under on the impeachment issue tonight, Chris Hahn. Let's look at this most recent poll from Fox. Should Trump be impeached? Is the wording here? No. Now you have yes, 42%, no, 50%. Obviously, reports of behind closed door battles between Nancy Pelosi and an increasingly vociferous group who really want to get this thing rolling and start these proceedings.
Well, look, the more the president resists congressional oversight, which is reasonable and is prescribed by the United States Constitution and the Federalist Papers and has been part of our history for years, the more likely it is that we are first going to go to court, and then if he refuses court orders, he'll be impeached. Just like one of those articles of impeachment over Richard Nixon was about the president resisting congressional oversight and obstructing congressional oversight. And I hope that Congressman Gaetz will agree that Congress has an absolute right to perform reasonable oversight over the president of the United States, and the president of the United States does not get to choose what is or is not reasonable. That is up to the majority in the Congress, and I'm sure that the congressman, a William and Mary graduate, would absolutely agree with that.
Well, let's hear from him. Congressman Gaetz?
I absolutely do, but the operative phrase there is reasonable oversight. Oversight is different than harassment. It's different than an endless search or a witch hunt. There has to be a reasonable legislative purpose for oversight to occur. And what's really instructive for context here is that there is a secret memo among the major Democratic chairmen of the committees that lay out their attempt to harass the president on a variety of issues that don't inform on a legislative decision. Just take today. We had an empty chair in front of us because Democrats have an empty agenda. They don't have bills to bring forward to reduce the cost of prescription drugs, to deal with the crisis of illegal immigration on our border. And so instead we have these show hearings where we stare at an empty chair. And I would hope that people all over the country would expect more of the Congress than this type of coordinated harassment.
I just want to point out that, the chair was not empty for, I don't know, 30 or 50 hours. I can't remember exactly how many that Don McGahn sat before the special counsel. And I remember the days when Democrats were pushing so hard for a special counsel, had to have a special counsel. Absolutely. Got that because they wanted to investigate all of this. Got Robert Mueller, who they went, all over cable news saying he was the man. He was, had great integrity, was going to see this thing through. He did it for 2 years. Was given all the documents that he requested from the White House. So, Chris, just a final word on this, and then I want to get to another aspect of this. But, I guess to some extent, the White House looks at this and says, when is enough enough? And can we move past this at any given point, or is it just going to go on and on and on with more subpoenas and more investigations? So
the White House doesn't get to choose what is reasonable oversight. That's not what the Constitution prescribes. Congress gets to choose that. And if it was okay and not privileged for him to testify before the special counsel, it's okay and not privileged for him to testify before Congress. It's like the president.
So you think he's going to say something that he didn't say
he doesn't want
already?
A movie being produced. He doesn't want to see these. He doesn't want the public to hear these things being said. That's because he's hiding something, America.
Maybe. All right. So, let's move on to the other aspect of this, because there's another side of this coin that's being investigated now, and that's, sort of how it all began. And, one of the things that's at issue here is, the credibility of some of the people who were involved in it. So I want to play this moment. We've heard a lot about lying in front of Congress and the contempt that Bill Barr may be held in by Congress. He's, trying to find some ways to push back on that now. But this is Jim Comey and then Loretta Lynch on a moment that they have a discrepancy over the interpretation of in the process of all of this. Watch this.
At one point, the Attorney General had directed me not to call it an investigation, but instead to call it a matter, which confused me and concerned me. But that was one of the bricks in the load that led me to conclude I have to step away from the department if we're to close this case credibly.
And here's Loretta Lynch. She says, I did not. I have never instructed a witness as to what to say specifically, never have, never will. I was quite surprised by that was his characterization of it, she says. And she goes on to say, because that was not how it was conveyed to him, certainly not how it was intended. Chris Hahn, what do you say about that? Because that's a pretty significant turning point in that whole story of the Hillary Clinton investigation, because then Jim Comey took the reins of it after that.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's wordsmithing. I don't doubt that somebody in justice tried to wordsmith it, some political appointee. I have no doubt of that. I don't know if that's the end of the world. Jim Comey did what he did, and had he not done what he done, I don't think Donald Trump be president today. Had this been, and right now we're seeing similar activities happening by this president's attorney general, and I don't see Congress doing anything about it. So it's very, obviously something happened there, and we have to understand which Jim Comey we're going to trust. We either trust all of it or we don't trust any of it.
Would you want to investigate him for contempt for not telling the truth in front of that committee?
I would say that you've got a problem.
Chris, and then Matt. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't know if he didn't tell the truth. I don't know if he willfully lied before Congress. He did say that he was asked to wordsmith it by the Attorney General of the United States. Maybe she was saying, I call it a matter, and he was saying, I call it a case. So, there's a lot of there, and maybe they should both talk about it.
It's sort of questionable to wonder which liar you're supposed to believe. Jim Comey repeatedly said that he wasn't leaking information, only later to have to admit that that had happened despite prior testimony. And then I don't think there's a single American who believes Loretta Lynch was talking to Bill Clinton on the tarmac about grandkids. And so I think it's indicative of the broader dynamic as we get closer and closer to the truth and the bias and the corrupt acts that led to this investigation. You're going to see Comey and Lynch turn on one another. You're starting to see in the intelligence community, Brennan and Clapper disagreeing with Comey about the extent to which the dossier funded by Democrats was part of the intelligence community's assessment. And so I think that as Mr. Downer continues his work to look into the leaks, the fraud before the FISA court, and then the corrupt intent back at the White House, those three things will open the door to, I think, a lot more.
Thank you.
I would say, Congressman, that the same amount of people who believe that the Trump Tower meeting was about adoption believe that the tarmac meeting was about
but we've got a conclusion on that. The difference is there you already have the conclusion of Robert Mueller.
That's why we got to hear from witnesses. We've got to read.
So you're saying Robert Mueller didn't find there was no collusion?
We don't really get to it.
Chris Hahn, Matt Gaetz, to be continued.
I can't wait.
You can't wait. Come back. All right. We'll pick it up right there next time. Chris Hahn, Matt Gaetz, Congressman, thank you very much. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Now, the Trump probes are in full swing, and as Chad Pergram just mentioned, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi clashing with Democrats pushing for impeachment. Big meeting tomorrow on that with Nancy Pelosi. Others worry they risk taking their eyes off kitchen table issues that matter most to Americans. Here's Nancy Pelosi earlier today.
Madam Speaker, are you under increased pressure to impeach the president from your caucus?
No. How do you address the division?
Joining me now is Republican Representative Debbie Lesko. This Congresswoman serves on the House Judiciary Committee. Congresswoman, great to see you.
It's great to be here.
First, your reaction to today's hearing on Don McGahn.
Well, this is nothing more than what we're getting used to, unfortunately, by the Democrat majority, and that's subpoena after subpoena after subpoena. And that's after 2 years of the Mueller investigation going on, 2,800 subpoenas, a whole bunch of, over 40 FBI agents. I mean, they're not satisfied with anything. I don't think if they would have said Trump is totally exonerated on everything, they still would have gone after President Trump. This is all about the 2020 election, and that's all that it is. It's a total political circus.
So do you feel that Trump's not exonerated totally on everything?
Well, certainly, you could tell from the Mueller report in Volume 1 that there was no collusion or coordination with Russia, and then they said that they couldn't find enough evidence, or they could not get him on obstruction of justice. So then Attorney General Barr and Rod Rosenstein determined that there was not enough to charge him with obstruction of justice. So the Democrats just can't get over it.
Congressman, how many committees are probing Trump? Because we're hearing that the majority of Democrat congressional insiders are rejecting calls for impeaching Trump. A poll by Congressional Quarterly found that about 75% said the House should stop and don't do impeachment proceedings. These are top Democrat congressional aides saying this.
Yeah, I think there's like 7 committees doing subpoenas or investigations against President Trump or his family. I mean, this is over the top ridiculous. And, you know, all along, I thought they were going to try impeachment. I mean, maybe there's some sane people left in the Democrat leadership. I don't know. But this is really over the top. The American people are going to see what the Democrats are up to. After 2 years of investigations, now they want to continue investigations, subpoena more people, even though this has already been done by a special counsel and reviewed and released to the public. I mean, this is over the top ridiculous, and all it is political theater.